the 26th day of the first month of the year 1996 after the resurrection of Christ, or the 6th day of the 35th week of the third year, or May 25, 2024. On May 20, a helicopter crashed in dense fog in a mountainous area in northwest Iran near Azerbaijan. On board were Iran's 63-year-old President Ebrahim Raisi, his foreign minister, and 6 other people. There are no reported survivors. The helicopter was accompanied by 2 others that did reach their destination. In practice, Iran is ruled by a supreme religious leader, the 85-year-old Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has the final say in the country. He quickly appointed Vice President Mokber to take Raisi's place until a new election is called in 50 days. Since the Islamic Revolution, only 2 people have held the position of supreme leader. They led a religious revolution that overthrew a hereditary monarchy. However, now the only visible successor to Khamenei seems to be his 55-year-old son Mojtaba. The accident is significant due to the high tension in the region because of the war between Israel and Hamas, an armed group backed by Iran that operates politically and militarily in Gaza. The Ayatollah stated that this accident does not change Iran's direction, and it is likely that he will make strong efforts to ensure there is no dissent within Iran. Despite the International Court of Justice ordering for the 3rd time this year to end Israel's military operation in Gaza due to the humanitarian disaster in Rafah, Israel continued its attack in Rafah this Saturday. The United States and Israel have called this order false and labeled South Africa's accusation of genocide as morally repugnant. Israel claims they have the right to eliminate the remnants of Hamas hiding in Rafah. Talks for a ceasefire are expected to take place in Paris after several failed attempts in Qatar and Egypt. On May 19, 2019, comedian Volodymyr Zelensky became the 6th president of Ukraine for a 5-year term with 73% support in the elections. New elections were supposed to happen in April this year, but due to the war with Russia, martial law was enacted in 2022, which suspended the presidential elections in Ukraine. This has left Zelensky as president indefinitely, with the agreement of all Ukrainian political parties who do not want an election until the war ends. Support for Zelensky is as high as 65%, possibly because Ukrainians want some stability. Putin, on the other hand, has said that Russia is ready to negotiate a ceasefire recognizing the current territorial lines. However, he questions Zelensky's legitimacy to negotiate on behalf of Ukraine, which Russia sees as a legal obstacle in the peace talks, even though the rest of the international community recognizes Zelensky as Ukraine's head of government. In June, Ukraine and its allies are expected to meet in Switzerland to discuss the terms under which they would accept a truce with Russia. Russia is not invited, but China is. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba suggests that Putin's peace talks proposal might be an attempt to sabotage this summit in Switzerland. It is also believed that Putin wants to show Western countries that a deal is possible and that Ukraine is unwilling to compromise despite the losses and the significant financial support required from the United States and its allies. Just last April, the US Congress approved an aid package of over $60 billion to support Ukraine with weapons and humanitarian aid in the war. Extreme temperatures in North America have affected millions of people on the continent. Meteorologists say that this is due to a heat dome, a high-pressure area in the Gulf of Mexico. Hot winds from the equator have blocked cloud formation, allowing the sun to shine intensely. According to an UNAM bulletin, their scientists report that Mexico is about to experience the highest temperature ever recorded following the end of the 3rd heat wave this week. This heat wave has already affected power lines, caused forest fires in various parts of the country, and will likely increase tensions over water resources among different communities on the continent. In Mexico, the presidential campaigns will end next week. As a habit, I like to conduct opinion polls among my Facebook contacts, and they often reflect the reality on election day. Here are my conclusions, which I believe can help you look at this historical moment from another perspective, although maybe you are not in agreement. Number 1. The most boring presidential elections in the last 40 years have passed without real surprises. The candidate supported by the president's Paul Finger has led the electoral process for almost 3 years without any major changes. The debates were just a formality for her, and her only obstacle has been herself. On May 22, during a campaign event for the Movimiento Ciudadano candidate, an event occurred that in risk management is called an act of God. This means a natural disaster that is not the fault of those affected and is difficult to prevent. There are two controversies here. The first is how good of a leader Maynes proved to be by his survival instinct, which cannot be faked. The second and more important controversy is whether the candidate should have cancelled the event after the Conagua warning about strong winds and lightning between 6 and 9 p.m. In my opinion, the candidate had run an extraordinary campaign until that day. He went from being unknown to having the possibility of reaching second place in several states of the country. The results of my poll show that support and enthusiasm for his candidacy stopped while support for Sheinbaum and Galvez increased. In the end, the difference is still very large, almost impossible for Xochitl to overcome. In my view, I think the main problem in Mexico is presidentialism. This is the concentration of power in one person and their family, like a king who chooses their successor. This does not mean that I think it was a mistake to support AMLO in 2012 and 2018. But Morena, because of its pragmatism, has proven to be just like its opponents in many ways, such as the corruption involving the president's children, dogmatism, and the loose promises that will not be fulfilled in the future. Even though voting is secret, I have no problem sharing my decision, and I am not trying to campaign for my position. The most responsible thing for me, based on how I see the world, is to nullify my vote for president. I have seen in these and other elections that Mexican political parties are not democratic. Their candidate selection processes are always dirty and messy, and none of the candidates is much better than the others. However, I still believe it is worth taking some time to participate in the electoral process. I will review the lists of proportional representation candidates. I will most likely vote against the overwhelming majority in the Congress of the Union because I think it is very risky to have too much power concentrated in one place, which leads to dogmatism and excesses.